For the first time ever, Gotta Get Up, live from Barclays Center. Well, I should say, I'm here live from Barclays Center. Brian, you're always here live. And we got to see a pretty big game. ABC, Aces at New York Liberty. Mm-hmm. And just like the first matchup, it was a smackdown. That and more coming up on this episode of Gotta Get Up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Hey, women's basketball fans, welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. Welcome to another episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. Erica L. Ayala along with Brian Fleurantin. We are here together live. Yeah!
This is it.
We're crushing it. And although the New York Liberty did have a handful of games this weekend, Brian, we really want to talk about this one.
Yep.
We are here maybe an hour or so after the game.
Yeah.
We've got, let's look at this. We're at the actual dais where the players usually sit. So someone, Sabrina, Stewie, and or Sandy Brondello left this for us here. So we're going to walk through this. 99 almost got to 100 again, the New York Liberty, but they held the Aces to 61. Yep. First thoughts.
I would say that the first thing that really stood out was just the activity level on defense. Even in the early stages of the game, you saw the Liberty just flying around all over the place. We asked in post-game that their switches were so in sync. JJ was able to sort of come up and blow up a lot of actions. Even Ionescu was digging down on plays, being active in the passing lanes, really being active and fully engaged on that front. And one thing also, just a little bit more on the Ionescu defensive side, they were going after her early. Like Vegas made a point to sort of target her early on, and she held her own. She was really able to make those switches, contest every shot, not make any bad fouls. So today was really a banner day for the Liberty's defense and how they're able to sort of fly all over the place, communicate well, make sure to clean up the boards, dominate the boards, in fact, and really make sure that there were no second chances, no letdown, no, let me just take my foot off like 5 minutes. Nah, no, it's not here today.
You said no second chances, but Brian, literally, no second chance points for the Las Vegas Aces, the top team in the league, who has only lost to Connecticut and Dallas before this afternoon.
Yeah. One thing I think about from the first game, a play that really sort of stood out as far as like how dominant the Aces were, there was one possession where they got, I want to say like 4 offensive rebounds in one possession, and it ended in an Alicia Clark 3. I think that took the lead to 20 at the time. And that was one of those where I said, oh, this team is way more energized. They have way more hustle, way more energy, way more heart tonight. So they were able to really sort of like knock the Liberty out right then and there. Today, they made sure that Vegas had no easy chances. They were able to play tough. They were able to play physical. They were really able to set the tempo and tone of the game, making sure that Vegas couldn't get out on the run as often, couldn't establish that dominance early on. Like Vegas was playing well to start, but the Liberty were able to sort of like withstand that early run, keep themselves together. And even though they trailed at the end of the first quarter, it's like, okay, we're fully in the game. We have that rhythm. We know what to do. And then just started building and building and building. And then after halftime, they just sort of took off in a way that we haven't seen in a while for this team.
Yes, and we definitely want to talk about that a little bit more. But let's talk about the first half, especially in the waning minutes, because A'ja Wilson, who we have to mention, in a 61-point effort by the Aces, only had 9 points. Their leading scorer, Jackie Young, with 16. I think it was a quiet, a humble 16, as Jackie is wont to do. It was a humble 16. You also had Chelsea Gray with 15 points. But A'ja Wilson, 9 points. There maybe was a little bit of drama. We're going to take you post-game to the Aces in a little bit here. But there was a knock that A'ja took, had to go back to get evaluated. Flagrant foul. Flagrant 1 on Jonquel Jones, throwing them bows. Do you think that hit to A'ja impacted the game at all?
I would say a little bit, only because in the first quarter, she had 3 highlight blocks where if you wanted to put an A'ja Wilson Defensive Player of the Year package, you can just play those 3 clips alone and be like, oh, wow, this player is so she has like arms of like a dinosaur. They just like head everywhere you look.
So good.
And they
I
were
literally
emphatic.
said to Miles and Owen, who I was sitting next to, I was like, Tyler from the committee who does,
Disrespectful blocks.
exactly. I was like, he's gonna be so busy after this game because the first few minutes were just wild with blocks.
Yep.
Stewie had a big block.
Feeling the flair of the possession is Gray. Oh my goodness!
Damn.
But you're right. Asia had a really great game early on and then took that hit.
Yeah, it felt like when Asia caught the elbow, it knocked the energy out of the building for a little bit because even on a game where the crowd was like 100% in favor of the Liberty, you know
85.
I
It was 85 to 90, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I get your point.
Yeah, like you never want to see a player go down, especially with a head injury, especially after last night when we saw Shea have to leave out
gosh.
and have to be taken to a hospital. So everyone was hoping that she was okay. And then when she came back in, I was like, oh, thank God she's all right. She can play. And then the energy sort of got itself back to where it was.
Yeah.
But for the Aces, I think because whenever you lose like the heart and soul of the franchise, which she is, we for all the talk about how sort of super the Aces are, the Asia is the center of the universe. Like,
Absolutely.
everything that they do runs through her, and she amplifies everything about the team, making it easier for Chelsea, making it easier for KP, for Jackie, Stokes even, being able to sort of like handle every responsibility and handle it in an A+ fashion is such a valuable skill for a franchise player. And I think just having her out, even for a little bit, it just sort of takes a little bit of the rhythm off of you, I would say.
Yeah.
So it was tough, but
It was tough. I think also early on we saw Kelsey Plum out of rhythm.
yeah, it felt like Ionescu was really able to sort of get after Kelsey in a big way. There was one play where Kelsey sort of got Sabrina on a beautiful crossover. I was like, oh, yeah, she's ready to lock in. But Ionescu was able to really use, we talked about it a little bit with her, but she was really able to use her strength as a way to sort of get an advantage.
Underrated strength.
Yeah. It's like, because we think of her as just like, a sharpshooter, but she got some muscle.
She does. She absorbs contact very well for a guard. We've talked on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans as part of Black Rosie Media, that I'm not a big fan of her first step.
Yeah.
That being said, she is an aggressive guard. We've talked about guards getting downhill and how that has been almost only what the Liberty have been able to do in years past.
Yeah.
But now they have a little bit more finesse, a little bit more skill. I do want to talk about, though, I was going to make a Pac-12 joke, but the time has passed. Like Pac-12, I know. Washington, Oregon, see ya. It's been a good run. But anyway, this was just an Aces team that never really was able to regain anything after the half. The New York Liberty, however, it has been what we've been waiting for. You and I were in the scrum between Courtney Vandersloot, Jonquel Jones, and again, right here on this dais, what were the Liberty telling us about how they felt this game helped them get closer to a full 40?
Yeah, JJ mentioned that, there are times where the Liberty will sort of like have those great stretches, but then like have a bad third quarter that let teams back into games.
Yep.
They were really able to do the opposite. They hung close in the first half, and then they sort of like hit the turbo button after halftime. And I think it was also something that Vandersloot mentioned, just being able to continue moving the ball, continue sort of getting out in transition, controlling the pace, and not playing Aces basketball.
Right.
That way, she talked about it in pregame too, just being able to control the flow of the game and being able to sort of like move in a way that's most comfortable for you as a team, as compared to just sort of having to play that fast-paced style that Vegas does. Being able to sort of slow them down, play them physically every possession. An underrated thing about this game was that, and she talked about it in post-game, but Benaja picked up Chelsea Gray full court every single time. And even though Gray didn't commit any sort of like 8-second violations or backcourt violations, just having someone on your hip every possession down just takes a toll on you throughout the game.
Oh, yeah.
And when your offense, for a team like Vegas who can get into the offense so quickly, having to really get into your stuff with like 14 seconds to go on the clock, time is running out a little bit. And JJ mentioned that they got the Liberty were able to get the Aces to overthink a little bit, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, I liked that as well.
The Vegas offense is so superlative. Like you almost run out of ways to describe them. They're first at the rim, first in mid range, first in threes, first in offensive rating,
right?
Probably first in free throw percentage. Like any good offensive category, they're number one in. And being able to get them to overthink and just sort of have that 1 second delay, which is all you need. If you're able to get them to overthink a little bit, get them to sort of like second guess, and being able to have a big like Gigi who can sort of fly out and chase down a Kelsey Plum, having a Stewie who can match up on like a Jackie Young or a Chelsea Gray on occasion, just really being able to throw so many different combinations at them and blow up what they're doing. It makes it harder for them to get into their stuff and make that free-flowing dynamic style that we're so used to, makes it a little bit harder for them to access.
Yeah, and in a minute, we're going to send you to some clips from the Las Vegas Aces media availability. I actually sat in that. Not the most comfortable room to sit in. And, you know, we try to keep things clean here, but let's just say they felt they got the rump beat. It was mentioned multiple times. And let's take you to Becky Hammond, who will soon be officially enshrined into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, along with already being a member of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. But here's what she had to say about getting a rump beating, but then also how sometimes you got to get your rump beat.
That's a good old-fashioned ass whooping. That's my opening statement. Questions? I think it was
And so again, that was Becky Hammond. That was post-game media availability. It was pretty short, pretty concise. We had heard that also from Asia Wilson and Chelsea Gray. That was one of the first things that they said, to the point where a lot of us were like, wait, did Becky already come? Because you know, that's what they said happened. Again, the 0 second chance points to the Liberty's 20. Now the Aces, that's not for lack of opportunity, but they just went 0 for 3. But only 3 second chance opportunities compared to 12 for the New York Liberty. There were some lead changes, but those all came early. And this was just, you know, points in the paint we take a look at a lot. 36 points in the paint for the New York Liberty, 26 for the Aces. And so what we also heard from Becky Hammond is that this is an Aces team that needs to get back to their defensive identity. And it's something that we also heard from Liberty Camp. And although they got the victory, we had been talking about the lead up and why that things can be a little inconsistent at times. And that's what I love. Anyone who follows me or has read any of my work, you know, I'm always going to talk about defense. And so the fact that in a one-sided game, both teams talked about the importance of defense and that grit and that grind that comes from really going all in defensively. Aces just didn't have it tonight. The Liberty got back to that tonight.
And one thing, especially for the Liberty, just being able to sort of play with that physicality and being able to sort of chase players off their spots, that part matters a lot. And when you're able to sort of like switch so seamlessly, and then you have a big like JJ who vacuums up every rebound within our orbit, that part is so valuable. Like there were moments early in the season where they would like the Liberty would have a great defensive stop, but then they'd allow that extra rebound. And then when you keep giving teams extra opportunities, eventually it's going to bite you in the butt. So being able to sort of own the glass and get that initial stop completely, that part opens up a world of hurt for opponents, and it gets the Liberty out on the run, get those easy baskets, makes life easier on offense for them. So that way you're not having to sort of like do everything in the half court, just being able to get out on the run, get the crowd even more on your side. That part matters a great deal. And I think that a game like today and being able to sort of like make everything as hard as possible for Vegas, that part I think will really be a blueprint for them and what they could do going forward.
Yeah, I love it. And it was something that, so the Liberty had a few games that we talked about on our last episode of Gotta Get Up. We knew that they were going to see LA again. They were going to see Minnesota again, and then have a big game in their return to Barclays. And it doesn't necessarily get easier. And Sandy Brondello talked a little bit about how, yes, she does have joy from this game, but she's not necessarily any higher or lower given this win or even the context of super teams and all of that stuff, because they now have to take care of business once again here at Barclays against a Chicago team that has beat them this season.
Came back from 19, in fact.
Exactly. And so having this game in their bag, and being able to win this game is something that Jonquil Jones told us before, big ABC matchup. We usually get the teams, just for those who may not know, we usually get the teams and the matchup. We'll get the players a couple of days beforehand, in addition to media availability that we would have just as beat reporters for the team. And in that, I loved it. But JJ talked about having to thug out a win.
Better at like having that intensity and that scrappiness and being able to, sometimes you just got to like thug a game out. And I think we're getting to that point where we really can just do that. Like, it's not always going to be a pretty game. It's not always going to be, and I think our last game was one of those games where you had to figure it out against LA and just get down to the end and win a basketball game. And so one thing I will say about this team, regardless of how we start games, when it's winning time, we definitely know how to buckle down and get stops and execute to be able to come out on top. And so now I think it's just about putting it together for an entire game and having that same level of intention.
Knowing that they have won games by thugging out a win, as you heard from JJ, but also they win games like this afternoon. Mm-hmm. And if that puts them in a better position, even just from a mentality and confidence level, when it comes to postseason. And Jonquil felt that, it has the potential to do that, because it shows not necessarily the breadth of work, but it shows and it gives you a framework as to what it takes to win in this league.
Yeah. I think that for this team, being able to win in so many different ways, that part speaks to I think it almost like just added to your memory bank for down the line. If you have a game where you have to win 110, 107, you can do that. If you have to win a 65, 63 kind of game and you have to sort of grind it out, they can do that too. Mm-hmm. Just being able to sort of adapt in so many different ways, play so many different styles, be able to handle even nights where Stewie can go 2 for 10 and you trust her to play that great defense regardless, because that carries with you everywhere.
Right.
So being able to sort of do that and being able to sort of adjust to different opponents, adjust to even how games are called. Like this game, no whistles. We just played just straight basketball. Outside of that one flagrant, everybody get on the court, do your thing, let's play. Being able to win a game that way, being able to sort of excel in that kind of environment, I think speaks to where this team has gotten from over the past 6 weeks. And I think it's something where they can use this as a marker to sort of launch into something even higher.
And we talked about a few of the things that you just mentioned, including, we were a little bit worried maybe, or should we be worried about the usage of Stewie? Brianna Stewart gets 23 points, but not their leading scorer. Yeah. That was Sabrina Ionescu, 31 points, and was magnificent from three.
Yeah, it felt like, I remember someone described Steph Curry as, when he makes threes, it's almost like it's a back-breaking kind of thing, where it's he can have 30, but it's a loud 30. Whereas he hits those threes that just sort of knock the wind out of you.
Yes.
And I felt for Ionescu today, she hit threes that had the building shaking.
Absolutely.
The building was turned up every single time she made a three, and being able to hit really difficult shots too. Every time they get a rebound, they'd find Sabrina out in transition, and then she'd be able to cash in that way. So I feel being able to do that was so impressive for her. And I think that she set the tone for the game. She was locked in. Everyone who was here was locked in. But I feel that her in particular, because she was almost a weak point in that first game, it was something where it's okay, I gotta make sure that I'm not the weak link again this time. And I think her being able to sort of bend the Aces defense all the way out deep beyond the 3-point line really opened everything up for everybody else too. And just having the crowd with you and making those big baskets and getting downhill too. Yeah. Because sometimes you think, she's a great 3-point shooter. She's her 2-point percentage is whatever, but she's getting downhill, getting to the free throw line, doing all these things. That part, I think, really sort of set the tone for today.
Yeah, you could feel Sabrina's definitely the type of player where I don't know that she'd admit this to us just yet, but she's like Last Dance, and I took exception to that type player, you know, like she's gonna put something up on her whiteboard. But she had a great game. We talked a little bit about Stewie, had an amazing conversation with young reporter Pepper Pursley.
Pepper extraordinaire.
Yes, crushing it. And you know, I had asked Pep if or who has to be an impact player to get a win for either side. So what's your answer for Vegas? What's your answer for New York? And we had a back and forth because it's an interesting, you know, the thought exercise.
Yeah.
But you know, I had to bring up my girl, Kayla Thornton. Kayla Thornton coming off the bench, 8 points, a humble 8.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like we talk about this every week, especially with KT, right plays, right time.
Yep. There was one play, even deep in the fourth, where the game was fully decided. She's still diving on the floor for loose
Amazing.
balls. And I
Yep.
feel like plays like that set the tempo for the franchise,
Yes.
where you're never going to sort of like take your foot off the gas.
Exactly.
You gotta play hard, play smart, play tough every
Mhm.
trip down.
Exactly.
Because I feel like for a lot of people, I feel like coming into the season, a lot of folks are, oh, the Liberty jump shooting team, this and that. But nah, we were tough. We play physical. We
Yep.
can beat you up on the inside. We can really sort of grind you out if need be.
Yep.
And I feel like players like KT sort of add to that.
Crush
And
it.
I think that also, I remember back when she first was traded, she did an interview with Miles and Owen where she wanted to sort of tell Liberty fans that, oh, hey, I got that dog in me. And
Oh, I know from
Yeah.
them Dallas days.
yup. And she's kept that up 100%.
100%.
And I feel like it's something where when you have a player like that off the bench who can sort of fit into so many roles, allow them to play a little bit smaller. Because although Sydney loves doing double bigs, without Dawson and Han around, it's Stewie at the center,
Right.
JJ primarily at center. So you could have KT at the 4, and having someone who can sort of do all these things and do it at a high level, I
Right.
think sets a good tone. And also something that was interesting today, I thought for KT, was she didn't hesitate when she shot. Sometimes, you know, this happens with MJ sometimes, where it's like you're open for like a second and you pause, and that's enough for the defense to get back. For KT, as soon as she was open and she got the ball, that thing was going up. And I feel like that is a good sign for this
Yep.
group, because you never want to have it where the starters have to do all the heavy lifting on
Right.
offense. They can and
Yes.
they will. And
Yes.
I think the deeper we go, there might have to be a situation where, hey, my starting 5, y'all got to go 35.
Yeah.
So having KT be aggressive and be willing to take those open shots when she gets them, I think makes it so that way defenses have to respect her even more.
I love that you brought up bench points. We almost always talk about the bench and performance. I don't have our fancy charts. I might drop them when we do post editing. Did you like the decision to kind of go with more or less the starting lineup even deep into the fourth quarter, or did that concern you a little bit?
I was okay with it, primarily because we've seen this team sort of trick off leads all the time.
That part.
Like because I remember when they were up 19 against Chicago, I'm like, all right, they got this wrapped up. And then I look up and then like Kalia Copper is going crazy. I'm like, whoa, what just happened here? So I think for this group, just being able to sort of have your foot on the gas and keep it there.
Correct.
And, you know, for a Vegas team, they play their starters a lot too.
Exactly.
And we know that they can heat up in a moment's notice. So just making sure that you keep, like you got them down, you keep them down. Make sure
Exactly.
they don't even think about getting up.
Yep.
Like you do that. And I think for this group, just more reps always helps too.
Yep.
And I think on the night, Stewie, like the highest was 33 minutes, and we've seen Stewie play 37.
Yeah,
So-
we talked about that last episode.
Yeah, so 33 in context of the workload she has had is a good thing. And also with the lead getting as big as it wasn't like the game against the Sparks where it's like you're grinding it out, having to like be
Right.
extra physical every time out. You have cushion, you have comfort.
Yeah.
So even though they're still giving max effort, it's like a different kind of max effort. It's almost like in baseball where a starter has like 100 pitches. If it's not stressful pitches, it's like, okay,
Right.
I can push you a little bit more.
Good
Whereas if you have 2 runners on every inning,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Deep into the count.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doing that kind of thing. So I think that part helped too.
Yeah.
And I think also we're on ABC. I want to put on a show.
Hey.
Like everybody's here, sold out crowd. I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
Like if someone wants to like pull from 30 plus and it goes in the flow of the offense, who can complain, right? have your fun, do your thing, and really keep building those good habits. And then you can sort of like you can sort of dial the energy back, and then the bench can just come in, make sure everything's nice and steady.
Yeah.
Put good plays together, do stuff like that, keep
Yeah.
playing hard, and then build that into Friday. And since they have 2 days off this week, because usually with the Liberty after a game, if they're off for a couple of days, so they'll take the Monday off and then practice Tuesday. This week they're doing Monday and Tuesday off, so they have an extra day to sort of rest their bodies up, because next week they've got another jam-packed schedule and a lot of travel, including a back-to-back from Vegas to Phoenix. So just being able to get those minutes in and then have that extra rest on the back end as a good reward, I think sets the tone for them.
I agree. We've talked about rest. We knew this coming week on last episode of Gotta Get Up, we talked about it, that this is going to be a grind.
Yep.
They're going west to back to east,
Yep.
which effectively the Aces did as well. And they talked a little bit about that in media here and there. And it sounded like maybe they had to move hotels. And so that's never something that you want. But to say it had the adverse impact that led to this scoreline, I think is a stretch.
Yeah. And they were all since Tuesday.
Yeah,
while
exactly.
flew in from Minnesota yesterday.
Right, that part. So I think it's great that they're getting some rest. I agree completely. Similarly to what we were saying, where you want the muscle memory of being able to thug out a game, but you also want the muscle memory of being able to run up a lead and keep the lead.
Yep.
I think it's the same for starters being able to really close out a game. That being said, we've talked about it. We talked about it a little bit last episode and throughout, that we also need to see the muscle memory of the bench and the reserves being comfortable and confident. And, I love being in person because the Liberty Beat is amazing. So many great minds, and we get the same information and then we synthesize it in different ways.
Yeah.
So, you've got your analytical people. I'm the eye test person and the defense person. I claim that. Thank you very much. We all have a little bit of a different spin. And so before we started recording, we were having conversations on, whose bench do we think is better? What players are impact players? And we don't always agree on this, but I think that's the beauty of it. And I think we're seeing an Aces team that has to get back to their basics.
Yeah.
They, for whatever reason, it's a long season-ish. There are longer ones, but it's a grind. It's still a grind. What we heard from Sloot in particular, but JJ said it as well when we were in the scrum, is we know that this matchup we will see another 3 times.
Yep, they'll be back
in August alone, including the Commissioner's Cup, where there's $500K pool for the winning team on the line. I loved JJ said it and Sloot reinforced it. They came in with a certain energy, the New York Liberty did, because they remembered what happened last time these two teams played, and they know that they had the number one team. They're the second team in the league, but you got the number one team coming in.
Yep.
You got to show up. And they were doing it on home court. I think it was Sloot who said, we wanted to make sure that we put on a show, that we defend home court, and admitted that that's not always something they've been able to do.
Yeah. One thing, Benai Shalini mentioned it, Jackie, our friend Jackie Powell, she mentioned that there was a
Friend of the pod.
Yes, there was a Liberty fan she saw who had a Liberty loyal shirt, and B mentioned just like rewarding that loyalty to the team. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I would love to sort of talk to like someone like a Jonathan Colbert, Kia Clark, who have been here the longest. Just being able being able to reward the fans who have been with them this entire journey, and especially from where they were in the darkest days of the franchise to where they are now.
Yep.
And I think that it's almost a sense of pride where it's like, I'm representing for New York, but I'm representing for y'all too.
Yeah.
Like y'all folks who've been with us this whole way through. Like y'all was with us during COVID.
Yep.
During the post-COVID 21, where there wasn't much fans in the building, so much things were like out of sorts and out of
The
order.
Westchester days.
Yes. Yeah, being able to be with us throughout that whole time, and you want to make sure that you give them something where it's almost like a snowball where, okay, you're here, you have this great experience, you were really able to sort of like be in basketball nirvana. You'll have someone else come in and then they'll get to experience, and you just keep building it and really, I think, continuing to, I guess, beyond establishing your footprint in New York again, and sort of like going into warp speed as far as like really making the city your home 1,000% again.
Yeah,
I think that it also, for the players, you wanna, when I tweeted this in the first quarter, like I was saying that this is what, like, it's hard. It's like nothing can beat a jam-packed, hyped-up basketball crowd. Like everybody, like when you're in these playoff settings, these big game settings, like everyone's dialed in, everyone's focused, like everyone's like ready to rock and roll, and you feed off that. It gives you that extra oomph where it's like, oh wow, you know, they bring it today. I'm not gonna be the mark out there that's getting picked on. Nah, not me. I'm gonna make sure that I give these folks something to be proud of, and I think that it speaks to a level of determination, and I guess beyond professionalism, just like determination and like a level of care. Like you got everything here, big ABC, everybody in the house.
That's
like
it.
This is what you live for, and being able to put on a show like that for your home fans, I think is extra special for the players.
And we heard that reinforced. Even again, I spent a lot of time in the visiting not locker room, because we don't do that no more, but in the visiting media room. And, you know, I know you mentioned that you had asked those questions to the Aces, but it was reinforced again post-game. You know, we know that this is a big deal, not just for Aces, not just for Liberty, but for the league. And Kathy Engelbert was sitting right here. She got stuck in that, you know, tri-state traffic, but we got her eventually. And this is big, and it's been a part of, as commissioner, Kathy Engelbert has been clear on her pillars. And one of them is rivalries. And this is bubbling up to be a pretty good one.
It was a, you know, good, intense game. Like, you know, I think especially once Asia had, I want to say the second or third block, like the bench was hype. They were, I was telling the folks in the press, I'm like, these guys are dialed in. Like they're ready to bring it today. And they matched the energy from the crowd.
They did.
You know, it wasn't as, because usually in these games, like, you know, everyone gets love, you know, everyone gets sort of cheered and things like that, but not today. Like everyone knew what the deal was. It's like, nah, this is the best team. They're coming to our house.
That's it.
You're not gonna feel comfortable.
Liberty loud.
Because you have to think back also, the last time we saw the Aces in this building, they beat the heck out of the Liberty on camp day in front of all the little ones. Like sold out crowd, 10,000 plus people in here, and they ran the Liberty out the game by like the 5-minute mark in the first quarter. So being able to sort of get that back after a year of, like, you know, having to sit with your fans here, like your last time seeing that team was like, oh wow, we're nowhere close to them. And being able to get them back in here today, they're still amazing, and you guys are starting to get to that high level that they are. You want to sort of let people know that, oh hey, you know, they got it, but we got it too.
That's it. You mentioned it a few times, but it was a sellout. 11,418 is the official mark and the official tally that we have for this game. Upper Bowl at Barclays, biggest crowd for women's basketball at Barclays to date. So a lot was happening, but we've mentioned it a few times. Few days off for this Liberty squad, at least without games. They'll have full on rest, as you mentioned, Monday, Tuesday. They'll get back after it, as Katie Smith used to say all the time in post game. We just got to get after it. Oh my gosh, I loved Katie Smithisms. Not so much the record during Katie Smith days, but either way, neither here nor there. But Chicago.
Gonna be tough. Copper burned the Liberty to the ground last time she saw them. Like, I think she went like 6 for 6 in that third quarter when they made that run. I was like,
filthy. Oh
my God, this is something. And I think I have to check, but I think they blew out Dallas today. I think they beat them by like 20.
Yeah, there were some wild games happening. We got to check up on that.
Yeah, like, so Chicago, they're close to a playoff spot, and they're going to make sure, you know, they've had so much turmoil and transition, and, you know, that's a proud group of players right there. They're going to make sure that they bring the effort and make sure that they can sort of get into that 8 spot, make sure that you get in there, be able to overcome all the hardships you have dealt with, and have that. So I feel like for the Liberty, Also, this is a Liberty team that tends to bounce back from when they get stuck with losses. I feel like this is a group that remembers how bad they felt after they let that 19-point lead let up. And Sloot mentioned this, that sometimes they haven't given the fans all that they wanted at home, because most of the losses have come at home. So you want to make sure, especially for a team that beat y'all last time, you want to make sure you got something for them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think from where the team is now compared to where we saw them in, I want to say it was June, right? Somewhere around there.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. This team is leaps and bounds better.
Oh,
and I think it starts with their work on the inside with JJ. So I think that they're going to want to make sure that they give the fans a nice reward before they head out on the road for another week or so.
Yeah.
And then that way you put on the show, do that. And also MC Light's gonna be in the house.
Hey, Light is a rock.
Hey, if MC Light's here, I'm gonna put on a good show.
That's
make
right.
sure, hey man.
Light as a rock, or I should say a boulder, rolling down your neck, pounding on your shoulder. Let's go. Jonquel Jones, once again, double digits rebounds. Has been that way since All-Star break. And we've alluded to this, but she talked to us after the game in the media scrum, and just knows that that's something that she has to bring. We've talked about it. First it was coming back from the injury, and then getting healthy, and now integrating, not reintegrating, but integrating for the first time with this squad. But also we got to mention, Courtney Vandersloot.
Yes.
Because Courtney Vandersloot got another mark. She surpassed Tisha Penichero on the all-time assist leaderboard and is inching ever so close to that number one spot. She talked to us a little bit after that. JJ was asked a little bit about how does playing with someone like Courtney Vandersloot benefit, and she's like, I get the passes, right? If I'm making the buckets, then that means that's how she gets the assist. I love that answer. It was like, she's passing it to me now. So I love that we're starting to really see Jonquel get more comfortable. And so all of this craziness, you know who you are, that we're getting all worked up about this Liberty squad so early and really coming after JJ. Now listen, I'll be the first one, and I've said it on this podcast, there's some things, JJ got some tendencies, and we saw a little bit of that with the flagrant one, where it's just the awareness. There was another foul where I thought it was hilarious that she was put out, that she got called for a foul. I was like, JJ, take care, Doug. I was like, sis, now you hip checked her and then slapped her on the wrist. Like, come on.
Players never commit fouls.
Right.
If you let them
exactly. I mean, especially we're not gonna go there because she didn't even play today, so we're gonna let that go. But anyway, Jonquel is one of those players. Y'all know. But we're not gonna do that. She out injured. Well, JJ has those tendencies and can fall into a lethargy.
Yeah.
That has diminished for the time being since the All-Star break, and right on time for this Liberty squad.
Yeah. One of the big things with JJ early was that she'd get into a good groove, but then fouls would get her. Like there'd be games where she started for like 6 points in the first quarter, and then next thing you know, at the 5-minute mark, she's got her second foul, and that just sort of takes the sort of aggressiveness and assertiveness out of her game. Right. She's cut down on that a tremendous deal. And I think that having her out there really being able to sort of like deter all these shots.
Yes.
And we talked about it with B in post game, being able to sort of switch so seamlessly, having a big like JJ who could sort of fly all over the place and match up with those small guards on a switch, I think really sort of like chases off opponents and makes things a lot harder for them. So you have her engaged on the defensive end. She's getting all these offensive rebounds. There was one point in the first quarter where I was like, I think she got like 3 offensive rebounds in the first quarter. And it's like every time the Liberty would miss, it's like, oh, hey, there's JJ again. I was like, wow, she's just like grabbing everything possible. And I think having a player like that who can score in the post, who can stretch the floor from deep, and someone who can just be like, oh, hey, JJ, if we don't miss, we need you to sort of like use your smarts and your skills to get in position to get those boards and get another opportunity. Having that, I think, is so valuable. And I think that it wears the defense down. We talked about it on the Liberty side, where it's like, they would make the good defense initial stop, but then let up those extra rebounds. It works the same in the other way. The teams can make those stops, but JJ is so big. I was telling Lucas, it's like she's playing more big, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things that you see is like, you know it when you see it, is
Yeah.
like you're playing in such a dominant fashion.
Yes.
Like anything that's in your ear, you're getting. If
Yeah.
they try to shoot over you, you're sending it somewhere else.
And that's why this team has been in conversation for super team. Now, what I think is hilarious is we've talked about this on this podcast, on this here podcast. The New York Liberty do not embrace that.
Nope.
Not at all. And they're tired of hearing about it. But I spent time in the Liberty, in the Vegas media room, and they're tired of it too.
Yep. No one, like, this is the only time in life where you're told you are so spectacular, but don't nobody want it. Nobody wants it.
Don't want none of it.
Asia told us if they win 9 straight chips, then we could be the super team. But
she's like, we are not wearing Lycra. We are not super. Hilarious. We're going to have to put that clip up in there as well. But Chicago is going to be a good test for this Liberty squad, especially because I liked what Asia said, just to go back to the Aces. Asia has said this multiple times before, but she's like, at the end of the day, it's aces versus aces.
Yep.
And I think, teams all have different ways of saying that at some point in time, but I want to see the Liberty really embrace that mentality. And I think the way they do it is by giving us a really solid performance and trying to not only meet the fluidity that we saw, meet the intensity, the focus that we saw in this game against the number 1 team. But how can they do that against Chicago? Not because they're a team clawing for a playoff spot, not because the Liberty are the second team, but because the Liberty are playing consistent.
Yep.
That's going to be a good test. And Chicago is a team. I mean, we've seen this Liberty team struggle against Seattle. We've seen them in recent memory struggle against Minnesota and LA. Yep. So this is not a thing, or at least it shouldn't be, right? That the Liberty only show up when they're playing the team that's ahead of them in the standings. They can't do that. And I think what to me was a good indication that they're starting to move to that mentality is that, and they were asked multiple times, I'm forgetting who, was it Lucas who was asking about how to get, or it was either Lucas or Jackie that was asking and got the Liberty to respond to making sure that they were playing a Liberty basketball and not responding to Aces basketball.
Yeah. I think that it speaks to like that peace question where if you're able to control the flow of the game and have it in your direction, it makes your life so much easier.
So much easier.
And it makes it so that way you're not having to sort of scramble to get back into a game. You can establish that early rhythm and then build off it that way. We've seen them do it sometimes, like they did it against Atlanta. Like the times they played Atlanta this season, they were really able to sort of like set that tempo early and then just build and build and build and build and build. And we saw that again today. So I think the challenge for this team going forward is how to sort of react first. Like Sabrina mentions it a lot, being able to punch first. That's a big thing for this team.
Right.
If you're able to punch first, can you continue landing those combinations, and can you sort of like wear a team? Can you wear these teams out, and can you make it so that way you get up by like 20 and they're not even going to be close to trying to come back.
I mean, and that's what we saw. The most complete game we've seen from the Liberty. We've seen brushes of brilliance, as I like to say. They have that in them. They need to be more consistent with it. And I think the next step is, because we know this Aces team, we're going to see them in Commissioner's Cup a few more times in the regular season. And then, I mean, anything can happen in the playoffs. But I think if people had to decide today, I think we have a good chance that we can see these two teams duking it out for a championship. We already know what Brian has to say. Either way, the Liberty's going to be there.
We'll see them again. And for a proud team like this with players who are hyper competitive.
Got that dog.
Yep. They're going to want to come back and be like, oh, word, like y'all got us that, like we got y'all the first time, y'all got us the second time.
That's it.
Now with 500K on the line, we're going to make sure we got something for you.
Come on and listen, Asia and them be real clear about how much that money means to them. But that's where having a player like Stewie, even JJ has never won a Commissioner's Cup, but has played in one. Stewie has won that thing. Okay. That is the next evolution for this Liberty squad? What does the dog mentality look like for the Liberty? They've had to dog out, or as JJ said, thug out some games. But is that a switch that they can flip? I'm gonna go World Cup on y'all. Now, we know the U.S. women's national team, they couldn't get it done against Sweden. But remember when Lindsey Horan, she showed us what that dog is. She was getting fouled left and right, and she was like, oh, really? Oh, really? And then sister girl went and got us them goals. That's what we need to see. I think there are glimpses of that, and there's certain players that play just with a doggish mentality. Benai Jalini, Kayla Thornton, I think are there. Stewie see the thing about Stewie, and we've talked about this before. What game was that we talked about on the podcast where Stewie wasn't getting nothing to drop, but she did everything she could to get anybody else on the squad to be effective with shooting, getting rebounds, hustle plays and we saw it again tonight. So Stewie does have that dog as well. But does the Liberty, I don't know yet. I don't know the answer. I genuinely don't know if the Liberty as a collective unit know what it feels like, what it looks like, and what they need to do to get to that dog mentality. The Aces, we've seen them do that. We've seen Chicago do that. We've seen, a lot of teams, I would say Dallas. We've seen teams collectively have that dog in them. The Liberty, I'm not saying that they can't do it. I just don't know that we've seen it yet. Not really, not completely. And so I think that has to be the next evolution, because this is a team that they did get the win. Now, see, the Sparks messed around and won today. So that means that the Liberty didn't clinch. Like, Sparks all of a sudden want to win games. But jokes aside, we got to wait to see if they officially clinch a playoff berth. The Aces have already done that. So at this point, I think we can pretty much say at 22-6, it's inevitable.
Yeah, they got it.
So now that's the next step. You don't want to think about it too prematurely, but you can't turn that on. And again, going back to the World Cup women's national team, I think that's what bit them in the butt. They waited to get that dog a little too late. We don't want that to happen to the Liberty.
Yeah, and I think for this team, I think having Connecticut hot on their heels is going to give them that extra spark to be like, okay, we want to make sure that if we make it to the finals, we're probably going to start on the road, and that's okay. But before we get there, we want to have as many games in our building as humanly possible. And this crowd today is going to be was so valuable.
It's a motivator.
And in a playoff setting, we were at like a 9 today. Playoff championship level basketball is going to be even higher.
Through the roof.
Like
sky's the limit.
Yeah, New York basketball, basketball fans here, when it's playoff time, turn up.
All the way.
It's all the way
all
up.
the way live.
Yep. You watch clips from the men's side, in playoff games where there's high stakes, high emotion. Crowd brings it.
That's it.
And it's going to be a jam-packed building every night for the playoffs. So that the crowd's really going to give them that extra energy to get through. So you want to make sure you get as many games in front of them as you can, and you dominate on the way to get there. So that way that okay, it's time. We can turn it up and really get on that good foot. Get on the good foot.
So we ain't got no brothers or sisters on the wall here, but we do got the Liberty logo here. Brian and I coming to you live from Barclays Center for this episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, as brought to you by Black Rosie Media. But we're going to wrap this thing up, Brian, because we've got a good week of practice. Now, you and I will both be around. Well, I should say you always around. But I'm going to be around. I'm going to be back home in New York. I'm going to be around. So we'll try to get you some bonus clips from practice, and then Chicago on Friday.
Yep.
So it's going to be a good one. So we'll see what we can get you. But in the meantime, in between time, thank you as always. Make sure, if you're not already, subscribe to Black Rosie Media YouTube channel, which is where the podcast lives, as well as anywhere you listen to audio podcasts. Make sure you follow the local W. Brian holding it down with the WNBA content and leading that effort. And follow us. We'll make sure we put our links there. But Busy XB, Lindsay08, that's LINDSAY, thank you, with a 08. And we'll come back next week for more New York Liberty basketball talk. Peace.